Right now, a press conference taking place at Raleigh Airport. They're talking about real IDs. This actually got underway about 5-10 minutes ago, but we're going to play it from the beginning. It is still going on, but we want to take you from the beginning again. So we'll start that for you here on WCNC Plus.
Good morning. My name is Carter Langston. I'm the TSA regional spokesperson. Thank you all for coming today. Very much appreciate it. The remarks from the podium will be on the record. We'll have a brief Q&A period after the final remarks. And then for those who want to go into the checkpoint and get B-roll, I'm happy to facilitate that. NPR, recognize you might want to get sound. I'm good with that as well. Just let me know after the fact, and I'm happy to facilitate B-roll inside the checkpoint. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Gordon, who is the TSA Federal Security Director, and then she'll turn it over to Division of Motor Vehicles Commissioner Paul Tyne. If you guys need me to spell any of those, happy to do so after the fact. But right now I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, and thank you very much.
Thanks. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Starting February 1st, travelers who arrive at TSA checkpoints without a real ID or another acceptable form of ID will need to follow a new identity verification process called ConfirmID and pay a $45 fee. At Raleigh-Durham International Airport, nearly 2,000 travelers daily arrive at TSA checkpoints without an acceptable ID. That's why it's important we make everyone aware of these changes. TSA requires all travelers 18 and older to have an acceptable ID when entering the TSA checkpoint. Some examples include real ID, passports, and military IDs. We highly encourage folks to get the real ID in advance of the February 1st deadline. If you plan to travel on or after February 1st and don't have a real ID, you'll need to visit pay.gov and pay the $45 fee and bring your receipt to the TSA checkpoint. We highly encourage you to pay the fee in advance of your travel date to avoid delays at the screening checkpoint. There's still time to get your real ID before this change goes into effect, so we encourage you to update your identification as soon as possible. Congress passed the Real ID Act in 2005 to strengthen security standards for state-issued IDs. The Trump administration is enforcing these requirements to better protect Americans. All states, territories, and the District of Columbia are issuing Real ID compliant cards, which have a star at the top. To share more about North Carolina's Real ID program, I'd like to welcome Paul Tyne, Commissioner of North Carolina's Division of Motor Vehicles. Paul, thank you for your partnership and your support.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Director Gordon, for your partnership. We at North Carolina Division of Motor Vehicles are proud to work alongside TSA to help keep travel safe and smooth for everyone. North Carolina has been issuing real IDs, compliant driver licenses, and ID cards for nearly 9 years now. And today, more than 5 million North Carolinians already carry one of the star in the upper right-hand corner. If you have a star, you're ready for the checkpoint with no additional steps or costs. For those who don't yet have a real ID, the easiest way to avoid the new verification process and fee is to get one before your next flight. It's straightforward. We've made it more convenient than ever. Start by visiting ncrealid.gov. That's ncrealid.gov, where you can confirm whether you need a real ID, and we have a short quiz that will help you to understand the exact list of documents that you will need to bring into the office. Every one of our 114 driver's license offices now welcome walk-in customers from open to close, or until we reach daily capacity for that location. We also continue to offer appointments, which are currently available up to 7 days in advance, with new slots added every day. And we'll be increasing the number of appointments that are available in early February. Finally, I hope you'll remember this point. Winter is the time to come to NCDMV. Please don't wait until summer, which is our busiest time of year. No need to show up early. We're seeing short lines all day, including the afternoons, and should you encounter a surge for some reason, we will check you in and let you wait anywhere. Our teams are ready to help, and getting your real ID now means one less thing to worry about at the airport. Thank you.
Now I'll open it up to any questions that you guys might have for our speakers.
Gotcha. I don't know who may be the best person to answer this, but does this impact people who are flying through RDU who are not North Carolina residents in any way?
The new requirement is for all travelers who do not have an acceptable ID. So if you don't have a real ID, a passport, or another acceptable form of ID, you will need to go onto pay.gov and make your $45 payment. You'll receive a receipt, and you'll bring that receipt to the TSA checkpoint.
Got it.
And again, we encourage folks to do this in advance of their travel date to avoid delays.
Gotcha.
Is a digital copy of the receipt acceptable, or do they need to print out a physical
Yes,
copy?
they can have a digital or a hard copy. The receipt will actually be sent to the email that they provide when they register for the payment. So they'll have it in their email, or they can bring a hard copy. Either way.
And I know some.
When they pay the $45, like what documents or what name is required?
The $45 fee will be paid at pay.gov. Folks can search for ConfirmID, make the payment online. They'll be required to enter some basic travel information, name, things like that. It's a simple form, takes about 5 minutes to complete, and then once the payment is made, the receipt will be sent to their email. The receipt is good for 10 days from the start of travel, so they can use the same receipt if they have a return flight.
And they will just need like their current ID during that process.
During that process, whatever ID that they have, if it's just a regular state-issued driver's license, for example, they will bring that with them along with the receipt.
So you're encouraging people to fill out that ConfirmID before they get to the airport, but if they don't have that filled out when they're trying to go through TSA, how's that going to impact people's travel?
If travelers show up to the TSA checkpoint without acceptable ID, such as a real ID or a passport, and they have not paid the $45 fee, they'll be directed to the pay.gov website by our officers. They'll be asked to step aside, pay the fee online, and once they receive the receipt, show the receipt when they return to the checkpoint. Again, we highly encourage them to do this in advance of travel before showing up to the airport to avoid any delays.
How does this differ from where it stands right now? If you're traveling today and then traveling February 3rd, what is the difference in what they pay?
The difference is they will have to pay the fee if they don't have that real ID or, for example, a passport, another acceptable form of ID. They'll have to pay the fee come February 1st and show that receipt to the TSA checkpoint.
Like the program you say, help encourage folks to get the real ID as soon as possible. Once they actually
Yeah, we highly encourage that they update their identification and go and get a real ID or another acceptable form of ID prior to travel. Identity verification is a critical part of TSA screening process, and on February 1st, we will require a $45 fee or an acceptable form of ID to process through the screening checkpoint.
Once you get the receipt, you go for TSA screening as normal?
Yeah, the ConfirmID is a new modernized identity verification process that passengers will undergo if they do not have an acceptable form of ID, and that will be done right at the screening checkpoint. Once the ConfirmID process is finished, they'll be able to process through screening as normal.
check and they go through the check without the ID or 45.
If they are a pre-check passenger without an acceptable form of ID, the $45 fee will need to be paid in advance of travel. So they'll be asked to step out of the line, pay the fee, and then come back through the pre-check lanes with their payment receipt.
Kicks off on February 1st. Are you all prepared for any potential delays if people do not have, this filled out? I imagine that not everyone, it may take a minute for people to get behind this.
Yes, we are prepared for the February 1st launch. We will have QR codes at the TDC podiums that show where to go to pay the fee for those that may arrive at the checkpoint without an acceptable ID and without the pay.gov receipt. So we'll direct folks to the right website, but ultimately they'll have to step out of line to pay the fee online. And we want to avoid that if possible. It will cause a little bit of delay in your travel plans if you show up without that.
Is there a chance that the passenger traveler that does not have their receipt gets to the checkpoint, pays the $45, they don't meet the confirm ID requirements, they can still be denied travel, correct?
If they don't pass the confirm identity verification process, then TSA will make the determination on the next steps in the screening process at that point. But we're asking travelers to bring an acceptable form of ID, real ID or passport. If they don't have those things, bring whatever identification that you have to help us to confirm your ID, along with that receipt that you've made that $45 payment. Okay?
Last question. Since Real ID started, and kind of what changes do you think will happen once we kind of get used to this new system?
Yeah. Well, since the launch of Real ID in May, 94% of travelers across the country have presented an acceptable form of ID. But that still leaves about 6% of travelers. Here at RDU, it's on average about 2,000 travelers a day that show up without an acceptable ID. So we are encouraging folks to get an acceptable ID. There's a full list of the acceptable IDs by TSA on our website, so you can visit tsa.gov to see a full list of those identification requirements.